Thank you very much. We'd like to begin this side event, accelerating whole of society action on SDG implementation through innovative civil society partnerships. We have close to 300 registered participants, but not yet. We can see those number of participants yet, but we are expecting many participants today. But first of all, thank you very much for choosing this event out of many side events during the HLPF. And I think it's different time zone and different countries. I think 6:30 New York, correct? Probably. And maybe West Coast of the United States, it's midnight, but 7:30 Tokyo. Yes, thank you. And today's event theme is partnership. And how will the partnership build a better society by achieving the SDGs? So I hope that we will have a good discussion on this event. And my name is Hideki Wakabayashi from JANIC, Japan NGO Center for International Cooperation from Tokyo. And also I'm chair of ADA, Asia Development Alliance. So, and we have sent agenda beforehand, but you can see from the chat box that just in case there's a URL of today's agenda, you can click on that too. So I would like to explain a little bit modality. And this session will last about 1.5 hours. It might extend a little bit, but try to keep in time, depend on the needs of the question and answer. But we might extend a little bit, but try to keep it time within 9 minutes. So we have now distinguished 8 speakers. And I'm not going to introduce because I don't want to take too much time to introduce, but please introduce yourself when you speak and your organization, blah, blah, blah. And we have categorized the themes of the speakers into 4 groups or maybe 3 groups. So we will take 1 or 2 questions if we have time after the presentation of each group, 2 to 3 speakers. And each speaker is given 6 minutes. Please remember 6 minutes. And you will hear the bell ringing from the cell phone from Joycena, then wrap up in 1 minute, okay? Then keep it tight within the 6 minutes. Then, of course, we have, if we have a time, we're gonna ask you, each panelist to give us last message in the end, 1 minute, okay? Yes. And please make your microphone off, except the speakers when they speak. And if you want to ask any question, please write your questions on the chat box and I will choose from there, but it's very limited time. We will not be able to take all questions. Please understand the situation, okay? So now let's begin. I would like to introduce Joycena from ADA and Deirdre from Forus to give us some kind of opening remarks, including concept of this session, expected outcome, kind of things. And so I would like to ask Joycena first, then Deirdre from Forus, please. Joycena, okay? Please speak slowly. You always speak too fast. Okay.
Thank you so much, Hideki, for this reminder. I've tried to
try.
Yes, I will try. Thank you so much. So, hello all. My name is Jyotsna, and I am the coordinator of Asia Development Alliance, which is a regional platform. And so to co-host this side event with our partners Forus, JANIC, CSO Alliance Malaysia, TAP Network, FIDC, UNDP, SDG Network Europe, and many, and Global Alliance, and many partners. So thank you so much. So basically, when we I will just go be very brief about this the concept about this proposal. We just thought that just we wanted to see that how Agenda 2030 leaves no one behind and whole of society approach that is fostered through knowledge sharing and innovative partnership, including between CSOs and governments, between CSOs themselves, and diverse multi-stakeholder partnership. And we also tried to explore how innovative, diverse partnership and South-South cooperation can connect partners in VNR reporting country this year and enable mutual learning and sharing of best practices. And we will see that how partnership impact that leading to improve VNR reporting, integrating the perspective of marginalized communities and a better understanding, and also to promote citizenship, citizen-led data. So we had some questions that we thought that this workshop in the course of time it will try to address, and the questions could be, how can civil society organization engage effectively in different kinds of partnership? What role can government play in terms of innovative partnership with civil society? And how do we maximize participation of civil society and other stakeholders in innovative partnership to ensure transformation? And last, how can innovative partnerships strengthen public awareness of the 2030 agenda? So these are some of those points that I would like to highlight here. And so without wasting much time, I would just say thank you so much to all of you, and I wish all the best. I wish we have a very good event now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jyotsna. Good job. You speak very slowly. Thank you. And can I ask Deirdre from Forus to give us some opening speech? Off the mic. Okay, good.
Hello, Hideki, and hi, Jyotsna. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for the welcome this morning. Forus is very happy to be a co-organizer of this side event this morning with ADA, our regional partner. Forus is a global civil society network. I hope most of you have heard of us. We're made up of 69 national development platforms around the world and 7 regional coalitions. And we're really happy to be associated with this side event this morning, because we believe that innovative partnerships are something that civil society is more and more going to have to take on if it wants to be really effective in monitoring and implementing the SDGs. And we're really happy to see some great speakers here today. So John Romano from the TAP network has set up a global multi-stakeholder partnership that he'll be talking to us about later, and that Forus is a member of. And also Ingo Ritz, who'll be talking to us about SDG Watch Europe, a European cross-sectoral civil society alliance. And again, it's doing great work at the European regional level. So these kind of partnerships, I think, are examples of what all of us as civil society organizations can be doing more of. So really looking forward to the debate today. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Deirdre. Okay, now we'd like to move on the first theme, which is how CSOs engage effectively in different kinds of partnerships. And I would like to begin with John from the TAP network. Is that okay? Good morning, John, please.
Hi, Hideki. Thank you. Yes, very early morning here in New York. But yeah, thanks for the introduction, and thanks to all for joining. As Hideki mentioned, my name is John Romano. I'm the coordinator of the TAP network. TAP stands for Transparency, Accountability, and Participation. So we're a global network that works thematically on SDG 16 issues, but also on accountability for the entire 2030 agenda. And so the thing that I'll mention today, the thing I'll talk about today is related to our accountability work. As Deirdre had alluded to just now, is that yeah, we're part of what we call a campaign for a decade of accountability for the SDGs. The name itself is somewhat similar to the decade of action for the SDGs that member states and the UN system had committed to at the 2019 SDGs summit last year. So this campaign is very much complementary to the Decade of Action from member states, but recognizing the role that civil society and other non-state stakeholders can play in providing accountability for the SDGs. Obviously, we need a decade of action. We need the priority to be on taking action over this next decade. But for us, as part of this partnership, we recognize what's equally important is to ensure that governments are also accountable to these actions as well. And so this is very much a multi-stakeholder campaign. It's been designed that way from the very start and very intentionally. As part of the core group, we have 4 big global civil society networks as part of the core group convening this campaign. We have Forus, GCAP, and Together 2030, along with the TAP network. And then we have other advisory group partners which help us reach different constituencies and different stakeholder groups. They themselves are large networks that represent some of these some of these other stakeholder groups. They include the likes of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN, which is a big network of academics, for example, or the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, which is a global network of national human rights institutions. So, we very much wanted to engage big networks that, their primary responsibility is to convene and mobilize different stakeholder groups. It was a great way for us to reach many of these partners, all by engaging with these key networks. As part of the campaign, one of the things that we did first was we wanted to take the pulse of stakeholders and people on how they felt about SDG accountability. How are they perceiving the challenges when it comes to accountability? Where are the opportunities for us going forward, and where should the priorities be? And so what we did, we launched in May, is we launched this global SDG accountability survey, which hopefully many of you have seen, but you can find it very easily on our website. It's just sdgaccountability.org/decade. And I can also link to it in just a second as well. But this survey is available in 4 languages, and it's open until the end of July. So the 31st of July is the deadline. There's still plenty of time for inputs for those of you that haven't already responded to this survey. And again, we want this to be a kind of a collective effort. We want to mobilize, not just civil society, but also other stakeholder groups as well, because all of this will feed into what we're calling the Global SDG Accountability Report. So this will be a first of its kind report that we'll launch as a campaign in late 2020. That again will take these inputs from the survey, kind of synthesize where partners and colleagues are telling us there needs to be more action towards, and then outlining basically how do we get to true SDG accountability well in advance of 2030. And so this is all just a really brief snapshot of the campaign. Obviously, there's a lot more that we have planned. So you can find out a lot more about the campaign on our website, and we'll also host a side event at the 2020 HLPF next week. It'll be held on Thursday, the 16th of July at 7:30 New York time and 11:30 GMT. And so if you are interested in finding out more information and of course following the work of the campaign, please do join for that event. I've just linked to the registration info in the chat box there. But all of this is to say that we really hope that colleagues from civil society and other stakeholder groups engage in this campaign going forward. Again, this is really driven from inputs from colleagues that experience progress or a lack of progress, and therefore are important for the accountability messages and accountability work going forward. So yeah, please let us know if you have any questions or want to follow up with us at all. But again, all of the information that you can find is on our website as well. So also happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I forgot to tell you that I'm also a member of steering committee of the TAP network, and I would like to ask you to join this campaign. Please attend that the 16th event. Thank you. So I would like to ask Ingo Britz, SDG Watch Europe and GCAP, and theme is evolving civil society processes on SDGs. Please, Ingo, please start.
Yes, thank you, Hideki. And good to speak after John, because we are working together on the Decade of Accountability. Yeah, my name is Ingo Ritz. I'm the director of the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, GCAP, and I'm also steering group member of SDG Watch Europe. So as GCAP, we were involved in the development of the Agenda 2030, and with our 58 national coalitions, we decided end of 2015 to form broad SDG coalitions at national level, at regional level, and at global level, like Action for Sustainable Development with also Forus, for example. So today I will talk about the experience at a regional level with SDG Watch Europe. Of course, there's a lot of experience at the national level. I have posted the side event we will have later today, which is mainly from national coalitions in the Global South. You can see in the chat. So yeah, we thought it's really important to have broad coalitions of civil society to influence the implementation. And so we started SDG Watch Europe in 2015 already, together with 7 other organizations. The idea is really to have it very broad. So we started with European networks from all different sectors. That means, of course, from development, cooperation, but environment, climate, but also social organizations in Europe, human rights, and different constituency groups like the European Women's Lobby, European Youth Forum, European Disability Forum. So we are now more than 100 networks like this. So both European networks, but also we included national SDG networks, which were formed in the last years. So in at least 17 of the 27 EU member states, we have this SDG networks. I just mentioned SDG Watch Austria as an example, but there are different names, like in Spain it's Futura in Común, or in Ireland, Coalition 2030, and they all are cross-sectoral networks. That means they have all these different civil society actors together, so they are yeah, watching the governments and doing advocacy work and also mobilize together. So I would like to say focus mainly on the EU institutions, because this is our first target group. So, you know, we have the European Commission, which is a bit like the government. It's not exactly the same, but similar. Then there's the European Parliament and the European Council. So actually, the European Commission was quite supportive in the negotiations for the Agenda 2030. But then after 2015, they became quite inactive. So we always demanded an implementation plan for the EU, for the Agenda 2030, but that didn't happen. Even the European Council, that means the 27 governments, asked the Commission to prepare this plan, but they didn't do. So it was actually the last commission under President Juncker. They had a different agenda. It was not a priority for them. So what they did was to form a multi-stakeholder platform. Their civil society was quite strong, but also like a business Europe for the private sector, academics were there. And that was a platform to discuss with the European Commission. And the main result was a reflection paper, which is generally quite good. You can find this online, but it is only 2019, 4 years after the Agenda 2030 was approved. It was only reflection, no implementation. So that was one of our big frustrations. Yeah, this has changed now with the new commission. And the main point is actually that during the elections last year, the Greens were quite strong. So now there is a focus on climate, plus of course the whole youth climate movement. And now the Commission President von der Leyen also includes sustainable development and the SDGs in her speeches, in her plans. But the big question is, of course, how much rhetoric it will be, especially now with the coronavirus and the stimulus packages. There was quite a danger that actually that the European Green Deal is actually more or less sidelined, but it seems until now this is not the case. But it's not yet fully clear how this will be implemented. So we actually wrote to all the commissioners. So we have 26 commissioners. It's like ministers, and many of them answered. So we have now talks with all of them. We are working also with the European Parliament. There are a number of MEPs. Those are the members of parliament quite interested. So we call this MEPs for SDGs. And of course, we work with the European Council. They have a working party. Maybe just to mention two topics. One is what is weak. The weakness is the external policies. That means I just shared this report. The impact of European policies on other countries, especially the global south, they don't consider as important. Of course, there's a European development consensus for development. They include the SDGs, but the agriculture policy, trade policy, tax policy, that is quite weak. And I mentioned consumption and production as an example. A lot of European products are now actually produced outside of Europe, where there's a lot of environmental impact. So the EU has to reduce the consumption by 80%. But actually now, if the statistics include only the domestic consumption of resources and energy, but actually, if they are produced outside, whether it's in Asia and Africa, the consumption is 2.5 times much bigger. But this is not included by the European Statistics Office. This is one. Of course, there are different social impacts. I cannot cover this now. I just want to mention the report we have done on SDG 10 within the EU. I can just mention two examples. One is the homelessness. There are 700,000 people sleeping rough in the EU every day or every night, which is 70% increase compared to 10 years ago. And we consider this as extreme poverty. I like also to mention, people with disability, persons with disabilities, especially women with disabilities, are often not part of the political processes. So for that, we have a project, Leave No Women Behind. So just to conclude, the political situation is quite important. That means elections. So we saw this at the European elections with the Greens. We saw it in Spain and Austria, where governments were not really interested, but with the change of governments, it changed. But we need to be prepared in terms of policies. So otherwise, there's a big danger that it's only rhetoric. That means once there's a political will, then we need to be prepared, or already before, with MPs, with senior bureaucrats, that really concrete actions are there, that this is prepared. So that's maybe one of those are two of the learnings. So especially now, there was a lot of talk and reflection the last years. Now in the decade of action, it's really about implementation. And for that, I'm really happy to be here today to learn and exchange from others. So I think, yeah, we can do this, achieve this only if we are working together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ingo. And please, if you have any question, please raise your write your question on the chat box. But I think I have one question for Ingo. What is your relationship with the Working Party for 2030 agenda in the Council? Does it make sense to you, Ingo?
Yes. So when the Finnish government was in the presidency, there was quite a big openness. It often depends on the presidencies. So they invite us usually to their meetings. It's so we give our opinions and inputs. And there are, of course, usually the council is quite strong towards the commission, but as I said, the council actually demanded the commission to prepare the implementation plan, but they didn't do. But hopefully this will change now. But I have to say, I didn't mention that even this commission, they have the plan for the European Green Deal, but they don't plan to have a SDG implementation plan. That's still missing.
Okay, thank you very much. The biggest theme of this HLPF is how we could respond to the COVID-19. Can I just one quick question to John? What's the work of the TAP network on the COVID-19? If you have any thing that to say, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Hideki. I think, yeah, with the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm sure a lot of us are finding ourselves in this similar situation where, you know, a lot of our work most of our work has turned virtual. And I think, you know, this has provided some distinct challenges for our work, especially when it comes to the national level, where we engage with our partners usually in country around the VNR process and you know, around spotlight reporting, for example. I think that has fundamentally changed where you know, all of these meetings are now virtual. It is a big challenge, but I also do think that it provides a little bit more of an opportunity as well for us to be a bit more inclusive. You know, sometimes when you host these physical in-person meetings, you have limitations that you know, somewhat restrict your ability to engage with as many partners as you wish to in the beginning. And it's the same concept with the HLPF. I think what we're seeing is that it's opening the door for a lot more people to participate. It's not just open for people that can afford to come to New York for 2 weeks once a year. You know, it's a lot more inclusive of a conversation. So for us, we've been, as a network, we've been trying to improve the way that we engage with our membership digitally and virtually. We've actually just launched actually a video interview series, so a video blog format where, you know, instead of having these workshops and meetings in country, which showcases the work of some of our partners, you know, we want to continue to learn from one another despite the challenges of COVID-19. So we'll be doing a series of video blogs, interviews with key TAP network partners, where they can share the work that they're doing on a regular basis, and so that we can still continue to learn from one another despite despite the changes that we've had to make in our work as a network. I think that's just one example. We also have a lot more with you know, working on our strategic plan, on our we have a COVID-19 task force as well. So I think that's just one example of something that we haven't done before. Again, a challenge, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to strengthen that engagement virtually with our partners.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And shall we move on to the next theme, which is what role can governments and academia play in terms of innovative partnerships with civil society? We have 3 speakers, and I would like to ask Dr. Gaushan Sachideva first. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your name correctly, but please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hideki Wakabayashi, chairperson of this session. And at the outset, let me thank both ADA and Yannick and all other partners for this opportunity. I'm professor at the School of International Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. I'm also Yomane chair, and I also coordinate Yomane Center of Excellence. And I have been involved with the development sector, both academically and also practically. I worked a couple of years in Afghanistan to implement ADB and Asia Foundation projects. And I have been consultant also with the ILO and also taught courses on international development policy at the Corvinus University of Budapest. So, and we also in fact started another thing a couple of years back, which is a Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, which I'm founding executive member of this. This is a forum of academics, policymakers, and civil society organizations, basically to understand what kind of development work Indian government is doing abroad. So today I'll be talking about India's experience with this multiple development partnerships and what kind of role or innovative role civil society is playing in this, or and where actually we have been able to take an advantage or not taken advantage of CSO activities. In fact, India is having 3 kinds of development cooperation experiences simultaneously. It has a long experience as a recipient of development assistance. In fact, it did receive significant development aid in the 60s and the 70s. Of course, as a percentage of the GDP, it was still, or as a per capita, it was still very low, but it was significant. And in the last couple of years, again, one can see that India is becoming again an important recipient, particularly accepting soft loans for many of the infrastructural projects. Now, apart from recipient, India also have a long experience now as a provider of development cooperation to fellow developing countries. In fact, from the very beginning when India became independence, in fact, from the 1950s itself, one can find that India started providing some kind of development assistance to neighboring countries. And then, of course, in the last 20 years, now the scale and geographical scope has increased very significantly. And this has also become a very important aspect of India's foreign policy discourse and strategic thinking. Every year now, India provides about 3 billion of development cooperation, mainly in 3 kinds of activities. One is, of course, the lines of credits. In the last 20 years or so, it's about 30 billion or so. Out of this, about 50% has gone to Africa, mainly in the infrastructure, and then in the neighboring areas, particularly in South Asia. Then you also have capacity building training programs provided by different organizations in India. Roughly about 10,000 plus people come from about 160 countries every year to India to receive these kind of training programs. And the third kind of programs India have these grant assistance projects, which are mainly in the neighborhood and now also in Africa. Now, institutional mechanism of this India's development aid abroad is still evolving. At the moment, it's mainly Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of External Affairs or Foreign Affairs, which is basically coordinating these activities. Now, in the third, India is in the last also few years is also now actively pursuing development cooperation through triangular activities, particularly with the United States, with a couple of areas in Africa, with few selected countries. They have also started talking with the European Union and its member states, and also with Japan, particularly now they have started with Asia-Africa growth corridors, and many of these projects are being identified. Now, this kind of history of India means that India has the potential to contribute significantly to the emerging global development architecture. Many of these activities in India, scholars have tried to kind of capture through South-South cooperation. As we know that India did play a very important role in the development of this South-South cooperation concept, in the non-aligned movement, in the Group of 77, and also in the UN system, particularly in the UNCTAD, and then also in the 70s in the new international economic orders. Now the concepts have become more complex now because almost all developing countries are also participating in the globalization process and also signing a lot of regional trading arrangements. Now within this broader development, different kind of activities in which Indian government is doing, in India, in fact, we have huge civil society, organization. The numbers are somewhere around 2 million. They are mainly engaged domestically, and they have tremendous development experience in many areas, particularly in agriculture, in renewable energy, in women empowerment. But they have not been used internationally by Indian government when they are implementing those projects. Their experience has not really been used. Very few selectively, some of them have been used the last few years. Now, due to their limited capacities, and now also many restrictive rules and regulations, I mean, they themselves have not been able to participate. Some few big ones, yes, those who have certain international connections and network. And in the last couple of years, Indian civil society organizations, they have also come under stress. One that, because India itself has become, more developed, so many of the, traditional partners have actually stopped funding to India. So they have identified now other countries. But of course, as we know that India still has a very large, poverty, and a lot of intervention is required. So there are funding restrictions which were there earlier from the international partners. At the same time, also domestic policy environment is not very conducive for the last few years for many of the CSOs. And they are also sometimes looked very suspiciously. So at the moment, these activities are largely dependent of the Indian CSO sector on the state funding. And most of them are now mainly engaged to provide those services which the government institutions are not able to provide very efficiently. So they are being used basically by many of the state institutions for that. Now, India and I think the global community can really benefit from the Indian CSO experiences, their own development experience and the large numbers. If they have more global linkages and they are allowed to expand internationally, for which, of course, the government rules and regulations from Indian government itself will also need to be changed. And then, of course, international partners also have to come forward and see where they can really utilize them, because they have been earlier utilized mainly within India, but that experience, I think, can also be used outside India. So what I feel now is that India has that, all kind of experience as a recipient, as a provider, now as a triangular cooperation. But the CSOs, their contribution is huge, but internationally, their experience has not been really used much, which is a pity, which should be used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much for explaining the history of your development. You have high potential to work for the SDGs. And now move on to the next speakers, Dr. Sabiachi Saha, Research and Information System for Developing Country India. Please, FIDC.
Thank you, Chair, and grateful to all partners for joining us today. I'm Dr. Sabyasachi Saha. I am representing my think tank RIS, which is based in New Delhi. We work a lot on development cooperation, localization of SDGs, and also science technology innovation for SDGs and financing of SDGs. I'm also representing today the Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, FIDC, that Professor Sachdeva mentioned, who is also the board member of that. It is a partnership between think tanks, academia, and civil society organizations to engage with Indian development cooperation process. Today, in my remarks, I would like to give a bigger picture of partnerships and SDGs that we are discussing today. Not going very specific into the experiences. There are more qualified people in this panel. But there is the potential, the scope, and the horizon of partnership between academia, think tank, civil society, as we try to accelerate the action on SDGs. We know that partnerships is about widening choices and bridging information gaps. It is also about leveraging knowledge. And here I would like to take this scope a little beyond pooling of resources, which has become the sole focus in the discourse on SDGs as we focus on the implementation of the SDGs. So the other three elements of widening choices, bridging information gaps, and leveraging knowledge remains equally important in the process. So what's the way forward on the action on SDGs? And if I may say, accelerated action on SDGs for the decade that we are left with. My first point is about democracy. Strengthening democratic foundations of society towards arriving at a new social compact. And why do I say so? The relevance of this social compact and reimagining the social compact at this stage is felt very strongly as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. We are aware of the Human Development Strategy and the multiple scores of choices that it indicates. It broadly identifies achieving better standard of living, getting access to knowledge, and improving health conditions with a view to expand life and longevity. We also know that human choices, however, do not end here. Rather, they include other non-material choices like human rights and political independence. Sustainability so far has received very remote and scant attention in our conceptualization of human development strategy. UNDP is here today, and I'm happy the focus of this year's Human Development Report is about sustainability, and we are making a very smooth transition from inequality to sustainability, and it's very timely and relevant. My second point is about the issues and the specific themes on partnerships. Ingo has rightly pointed to several of them. How do we enter and build partnerships for sustainable agriculture, climate resilience, water conservation, health, education, gender, decent work, inclusive infrastructure, and urbanization? The focus should be about reducing vulnerabilities and exclusions. Constructive role of partnerships and CSO engagement we have seen in India, and which was very evident during this COVID times. The third point is about how do we partner with government. It is about these thematic areas, but also about the larger processes that is undergoing simultaneously on SDG reporting, be it through VNRs and indicator development. In India, there has been some experience about engaging with the larger civil society and academia and think tanks in both these processes. But we also need to emphasize that some countries are large and with larger populations, where the process has to be thoroughly participatory to capture, as we say, the voice of the the groups that are left behind. We have some experience in working with private sector foundations, CSOs, as well as the government in localizing SDGs, particularly in the northeastern part of the country, and the results have been very encouraging. Professor Sachdeva has already talked about development cooperation and South-South cooperation and the scope of partnerships, and also scope of partnerships with civil society organization. The biggest merit when we talk about South-South cooperation is about people-to-people connect. And that takes us beyond business, markets, and value chains. Solidarity lies at the core of it, and partnerships would enable multiplying channels of institutional learnings and technology and capacity building. My fifth point is about science, technology, innovation. Whether we believe technology as a panacea. Nevertheless, science, technology, innovation offers hope and solutions to long-standing problems. COVID has connected public with science. Governments are increasingly relying on technologies to bridge development gaps. Market-driven solutions are ubiquitous, but there is need for wider communication on science, acceptance of access, equity, and inclusion principles, socioeconomic assessment, and bridging the gap between STEM and STEAM, as they say. We need also stronger partnerships.
Just remember that that kind of sound means that the 5 minutes passed. Yes, so please wrap up.
I am aware. I am aware of that. So I'm left with my 1 minute. Yes.
Okay.
So partnerships going ahead would also be about sensitization, awareness building, capacity building about sustainability itself, and we are talking about at all levels: sustainable lifestyle, sustainable production and consumption, disaster resilience, and such efforts need to go up manifold. We are also aware of the various new forms of partnership that is coming up, where private sector definitely plays a significant role. It is about leveraging resources. It is also about leveraging new knowledge and technologies, and also building on skill pool. Social entrepreneurship and incubators have come up in a big way. They have a particular purpose and role. We are also faced with other ideas like Ideas Labs, startups, hackathons, but the stronger citizen connect is very necessary. Finally, as we are talking about COVID-19, we know that we are pushed into short-term uncertainties of all kind. But in the long run, there is need to build resilience and sustainability. And here I would like to conclude by saying that both the time-tested as well as innovative partnerships are the way forward, and together we can. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sabithaji Saha. Now, I would like to move on to ask Dr. Denison J. Soria. And after three speakers' presentation, we would like to take 1 or 2 questions. So prepare just writing on the chat box and indicate who you want to ask. Yes. So can I ask Denison?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a PowerPoint and would like to focus. The theme is multi-stakeholder partnerships in localizing SDG. This is the case study of a Malaysian experience of the CSO SDG Alliance. Next. Now, this partnership is with 5 different partners: civil society activists, parliamentarians, local level civil servants, academicians and think tanks, and local communities. We hope that in the next phase, we would enlarge this to include the private sector as well. The Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance is a national network of social, economic, environmental organizations that focus on gender, human rights, indigenous persons, disabled persons. And the Alliance approached the Speaker of Parliament because since the general elections, 14th general election in 2018, Parliament was undergoing reform, and part of the parliamentary reform process they agreed to the formation of an all-party parliamentary group on SDGs in Malaysia, accepted by the Parliament House itself, and the federal government of Malaysia through Ministry of Finance allocated some money in this year's budget for the CSOs to execute this program with parliamentarians. Next. Now, there are 12 members of parliament. It's a bipartisan group with them forming the committee, and the civil society is actually the secretariat. 10 parliamentary constituencies were chosen as the pilot phase. It includes 5 dimensions: field study and research on local issues, local solutions which are SDG focus, policy implications that are then brought back to Parliament, as well as to the government agencies. And finally, the parliamentary monitoring process of SDG delivery and implementation are the 5 key things that we looked at. Next. Now, this is part of the field study. That means academicians, civil society goes down to the ground to gather data, information, discussion, as well as interact with civil servants at the local level. And this data is compiled together, and that forms the analysis with the member of parliament and the government agencies for local prioritization of issues from an SDG perspective, and then solutions are being drawn on. Next. We also have the input, which is a dialogue with the economic planning unit. So there is a grounded research, and that it moves up from micro to macro policy. And this was a meeting that was held recently with the economic planning unit with 12 members of the alliance, who then presented implications for public policy and input into the development planning. Next. Yeah, this is my final slide. I think one would recognize there are major challenges as well. The readiness at the local government level to adopt partnerships. We are talking of SDG 1717, which is multi-stakeholder sharing of local data, collective decision-making. And so there needs some time for that kind of adjustment with civil society and academics involved. There is some resistance to a rights-based approach, because we are not just looking at welfare, we are looking at empowerment, we are looking at citizens' rights, we are looking at accountability, implications of local budgets, prioritizing, which might differ between the agency and local communities, so some resistance. And then we have local politics, either at the local level or between the central government and state government and local government issues, or among the political parties there that might have some issues that then affects accountability or funding, or decision-making or prioritization, or politics then being used in a welfarist way rather than empowerment. But we recognize there are 4 potentials. I highlighted 3, but in listening to the discussion, I've added a 4th point. First is the partnership model really is, because we got the endorsement of the central government, we got the endorsement of parliament, working with the parliamentarians across the political divide, going to their constituencies, in the committees of the parliamentary house to then explore. So the partnership model with academicians from different places, civil society is great. Next phase, we look for sustainability with private sector as well. The second point is the localizing of SDGs, because a lot of planning is done at the top level. It's then top down rather than bottoms up. In this process, going to a fishing community or a group of flat dwellers or to a village or to informal sector and working with them to draw local development agenda is quite a challenge and a reversal of how government knows it all kind of approach, or with non-state, non-citizens, migrants, refugees, these kind of more vulnerable groups under the theme of leaving no one behind. But there is also the capacity building of the civil servant at the local level. They know their mandates in their agencies, but not the cross-cutting nature and the global SDG agenda, national level agenda has not really gone down to the local. The fourth point is actually accountability, which can be a parliamentary role. And with the data coming back to parliamentarians and through speeches or parliamentary questions, or with the government at the central level or at the other levels, it is then possible to hold some accountability. And so at this point, we are seeing a pilot implementation, but this will lead on if parliamentary members agree and if the funding is available, then to move on to incorporate other parliamentary constituencies, because there are 222 in Malaysia. We're seeing the potential of the first 10 in the first 12 months. There's a delay of 3 months due to COVID. So partnership is essential, but the dynamism of civil society, academicians, professors, researchers have moved on to make this possible. And some openness and resistance at different level, but we have to persevere on. And I think that's something that civil society knows how to wait, to stand, to diplomatic address. But the potential is tremendous. And I did hear from the EU example that there is some work. We link this to the constituency of a parliamentarian who is close to the voter, and it's one of the parliamentary roles beyond legislature, policy, advocacy, holding government accountable. They also have a role to the citizen, and most of them know who are the neglected ones in their own constituency. And at least in the 10 examples that we are seeing in Malaysia, there is this potential. Thank you very much for this opportunity to Ada and to the other partners. And this is something we can continue to monitor and see the results of our study and its impact when the impact assessment is undertaken. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Denison. I'm sorry that we couldn't hear the sound of the 5 minutes, 6 minutes sign.
Oh, was there a sound?
No. I couldn't hear it too.
Because I didn't hear it. If not, I would have. Thank you.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, but thank you very much. So we had 2 speakers from India and 1 speaker from Malaysia. So we were able to share those rich experience in those 2 countries. Any question? Okay, there are many long sentences. Please summarize your question if you have. Okay, we will come back. Any quick question? Okay, we can come back later on. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. I might have a question, but since it's a limited time, I might ask if we have a time left after that. So move on to the next theme. CSO and the United Nations and multi-stakeholder global platforms. We have two speakers, and I will be the last one, but I might continue to give a presentation after these two speakers. So first of all, I'd like to ask Priya Sood, a coordinator of Global Alliance on Reporting on Progress on SDGs 16+. Please, Priya.
Thank you, Hideki. Thank you all. Thank you, Jyotsna and Deirdre, for inviting me and the Global Alliance for reporting progress on SDG 16. We're a coordinating platform of UN agencies, UN member states, private sector, and civil society, really focused on monitoring and reporting on Goal 16. And I will try to be as quick as possible. My presentation, I'm going to share the screen now, so just give me a few minutes, but I wanted to thank you all, and I'm happy to present. Hold on, where is it? Are you able to see it?
Not yet, Priya.
Oh, I have on my screen, so I'm not sure what's going on. Hold on. How about now? You know what? I'm going to unplug my screens. I'm on screen. Is this working now?
Not yet.
Yeah, otherwise I have your presentation from Forus, so maybe I can just put it and you can next for the slide. Yes.
That would be helpful just to save time. I'm here to talk a little bit about why SDG 16. It's an important goal. It was thematically reviewed in 2019, and it's a relatively new goal, very politically sensitive, but very much an enabling goal. So we have plus in front of it, SDG 16 plus, that really, in a nutshell, if you can't work and advance SDG 16, none of the other, many of the other goals will be affected. So that's why we feel at the Global Alliance that this is a specific goal that needs a particular attention. The Global Alliance is currently steered. It's a very interesting multi-stakeholder partnership. It's steered by 7 member states, right now co-chaired by the UK and Sierra Leone, but really a secretariat of 7 UN agencies, 3 private sector organizations, and 3 civil society organizations. So a lot of partnership building to really advance monitoring on this. I'm going to focus a little bit right now, we're at the HLPF, on the voluntary national reviews and how this is becoming increasingly an effective process, an effective tool to leverage partnerships and to build partnerships. So VNRs are not an end to themselves. They're not just a report that you work on for a year in country and come deliver at HLPF, although that does add some notoriety to your country. It's really about a learning experience, but it's also a process, like I said, that has several steps within it to help build partnerships. And we've recently, I think the organizers are going to send this around, but we've recently developed a guide to report on SDG 16 in VNRs, which is tailored for member states, but stakeholders, I encourage civil society and private sector to look at it. There's a link here in the presentation, so we will share the presentation after the session, hopefully, but it is located on the SDG 16 hub, and it's just released last month, where it goes through a series of steps about how to report specifically on SDG 16. You'll notice the red arrows that I have here, the stages. These are some of the key steps where there's an opportunity to start identifying some of the stakeholders and partners that can be involved in the process. So when you're planning the VNR, you're planning the SDG 16 chapter, which of the ministries, of course, are relevant to SDG 16. It's not just peace, justice, and inclusion, but access to education, access to health right now in this current pandemic, but also looking a little bit broader as to what stakeholders, private sector, civil society, representatives outside of capital that can be involved from the start. Stakeholder analysis engagement, that's part of that planning process. Once these actors come together, jointly defining reporting properties, looking at data collection, gap analysis, these processes, if the private sector and civil society are already at the table, can start identifying ways to look at the gaps and see what they can do once the VNR is complete. So what are the recommendations in the VNRs? Where are the gaps, and how can these partners help to support those gaps? Specifically, one of the examples is data collection and gap analysis. And I'm referring here to the post-VNR. You know, what happens once the VNR is presented? You come back and you put it on a desk and you don't, on a shelf, and you don't look at it anymore? No, you take it and you try to, again, engage the partners that were involved in the development of the chapter in the VNR. And that conversation has already begun, so it's a little bit easier to step that up. I've listed a few case studies on data collection and gap analysis. These three countries have used different ways of engaging a larger spectrum of stakeholders. So the UK has an excellent web portal, which I encourage you to look at to see and to engage civil society partners and private sector partners in looking at data, and providing data, and helping to supplement some of the data gaps that exist. And this website has been replicated by other countries. Sierra Leone has really had a civil society lead in their 2019 VNR, where they really consulted local states and governance councils. Very much relevant, I think, in Asia in terms of really reaching out to the local organizations and provincial governments. Pakistan had 4 technical working groups, and each of these consisted of private sector, civil society, as well as government, looking at new ways, new methodologies to collect data. I chose to look a little bit more on the private sector because it's much harder, I have to say, to be perfectly frank, to engage. It's slide 7, sorry, I'm not sure where you are on this slide, I'm looking at my slide. Slide 7, looking at ways to engage the private sector. They have, it has noted in the 2019 VNRs, and VNRs have almost doubled since they were submitted, that 46 out of the 47 countries listed that they did engage private sector. Now, I mean, of course, they can say a lot of things, and you want to look a little bit more closely at how the private sector was engaged, but there's more of a recognition that it's important to try and engage them. Businesses are it's the next slide, thanks. Yeah, businesses are keen to work on the 2030 agenda, however, less so on SDG 16. So there's a lot of education that needs to be had. Generally, it's the last slide. I'm still, I don't know where the slide person is. It's the last slide.
Sorry, there
partnering with
in your presentation.
Oh, you have the older one. Okay, it's okay. I'll just quickly describe it. It has this approach been used. So in terms of implementation and partnership, Ghana is working with the National Human Rights Institution to develop a national anti-corruption plan and engaging the private sector on that plan. The Global Compact, the UN Global Compact, has local networks which really get involved, a lot of them in the 2019 into the VNRs. And South Africa, I encourage you to look at their case. In Pakistan, again, they had a national advisory committee on SDGs, and they had representation from private sector specifically, reached out to them to engage. And now that the VNR is done, looking at specific opportunities for PPPs. And in terms of policy and advocacy from our perspective, we have White & Case, which is a company that helps us analyze data from the VNRs on SDG 16, and the link is in the presentation. So I will send that to you, those reports to you as well through the chat, but hopefully this presentation will be shared. Thank you. I know I spoke fast, right? Don't want to talk too long.
Okay, finished?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we have received a couple of questions. And before moving to the next presentation, I would like to take some questions. And first one is Akio. I try to find out.
Can I say
yes,
the
please.
question?
Yes,
Okay,
Akio.
so question from Akio to all the three academics. Are there academic transnational network in South Asia or Southeast Asia level on SDGs?
Anybody from three speakers, academics?
I can respond. In the Malaysian context, the academics are providing the component of research, grounded research, as well as comparing it with secondary data. And they are coming from public universities from different parts of the country where the parliamentary constituencies are. And the universities also have think tanks, and some of the research institutes in public universities are now taking SDGs as a major focal point. And so the funding for research is actually enabling the visibility of civil society work and so forth. And that is encouraging in the Malaysian context, but that the scientific group on SDGs are there, but in the Malaysian case, these, in our experience, they are working with the civil society to research, document, and bring it back to the parliament for parliamentarians to use it in their speeches, which could be accountability as well. That is something we'll test out in the long run. Thank you.
If I may, I can cite a few examples.
Okay, thank you. Yes, from both or from India. Garcia?
Yes, as far as South Asia is concerned and SDGs, one is that, within South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, most of the SDGs have been now aligned within the SAARC development goals. But, we know that SAARC has not been very successful in the last, 10, 15 years because of various reasons, which we can discuss if there's a time. But we also have some of the other initiatives, particularly by multilateral organizations, like at the UNSCAP, they have a South Asia SDG forum where they do, collect people from or organization, institutions from within South Asia and try to come forward with some kind of common agenda. But since SAARC as an organization which was for South Asia has not been successful in many areas. So SDGs, yes, they keep talking about SDGs. They have, as I said, they have aligned their agendas, but beyond that, I doubt they have really come out with anything more concrete. But at the multilateral level, UNSCAP, ADB, etc., they are the one who are doing. But perhaps Mr. Sabyasachi Saha, since they work with many other partners, he perhaps would know more what is happening at the South Asia and Southeast Asia level on SDGs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sabyasachi?
Yes, as Professor Sachdeva has rightly pointed out that the South Asia SDG Forum is one such platform where they do the annual meetings before the high-level political forum and the Bangkok meetings. And there, there is large participation from academics. That said, that is more the regional. But as we talk, there are also platforms in India that are doing are playing a very important role as we see on their interventions on SDGs. FIDC, of course, we have just mentioned, it was beyond development cooperation. We also deal a lot on SDGs and localization of SDGs that connects us beyond the borders, of course. And that is something that we are particularly think is important. We are also, in some of the initiatives that my institution is involved in is about, building the University Think Tank Connect. Again, with a lot of emphasis on how do we explore SDGs, and also building some young scholars forum around that. So that is happening. I am also aware of something called the Netra Foundation that works in the northeastern part of India, and it is purely an academic platform, a platform with academics from all the 8 states in the northeastern part of India. And we are also very much involved in the process, which plays a very crucial role in informing, the local specificities and context, be it partnering with the government, as well as the reporting exercise, as well as capacity building. So individual, India being a large country with several states and their own context, but some of the platforms are very active, and I can share more information on this if required.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick, Denison, just quick question: who leads? I missed the. Who lead in your country the partnership processes for SDGs localization? Is it the CSO or other entities?
Okay.
Please make your answer very quickly, short.
Okay. And in Malaysia, the coordinating agency is the Economic Planning Unit, and they set up the National Steering Committee, where civil society partners were invited to be alongside government agency. That's the good point. Unfortunately, between 2016 and 2019, the steering committee met only twice. So there is a difficulty at that level, but CSOs, I would feel, has taken the initiative now in the case study I have highlighted to ensure partnerships on the ground, and individual ministries like science or education or welfare or youth then have specific programs at that level. So the localizing is an issue, because when governments make the VNR reports, they are more drawing in national data and statistics. It's not as though the agenda of SDG in its cross-cutting nature is rampant in its delivery at the ground. And this is the major challenge of moving from New York to the national capital to every local area, which is the theme of leaving no one behind. But that's a key agenda and challenge. But in Malaysia, it's the Economic Planning Unit. And one of the photos, because one of the deputy minister is a member of our SDG APPG group, and that's given us a good access to central government at this point. But only time will show how effective when we evaluate its impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question from Urna about private sector engagement, but which is related to my presentation. So I'd like to move on to the next presentation. If you don't have any question to Priya, okay, maybe we can come back. And now I would like to ask UNDP from South Korea, Artemi, I forgot, I cannot pronounce your last name, but development effectiveness. And after that, I would like to present my, give my presentation about private sectors. So can I ask UNDP, Artemi?
Thank you very much, Hideki, for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here at this side event. It feels strange to have this side event virtually. It would have been nice to see all of you in the context of the HLPF. At the same time, I know from experience that it will have been a challenge to accommodate this number of participants as we have right now. I'm really glad to see that there's a lot of interest towards this subject. And when we started discussing with Jyotsna the concept for this event, I thought that there would be a lot of interventions on the SDG 16, obviously, like from my colleague right now, but I thought that it would be amiss not to discuss at all on the SDG 17, on the partnerships. That is somewhat of a glue that holds all the SDGs together, and also a glue that brings all the stakeholders together. Sabyasachi already touched upon this issue quite a lot, but I wanted to, within this broader context that he discussed, to talk about the partnerships that happen in the context of development cooperation, because a lot of multi-stakeholder processes at the country level actually assemble around the development cooperation. And I think right now, during the times of the COVID, even in some of the countries that started forgetting about this, it's becoming relevant again. And of course, this agenda has deep roots. I would not go in depth, but just wanted to briefly outline the evolution of the civil society participation. The sort of the large-scale participation started from the high-level forum on aid effectiveness in Accra. We had the pleasure of working with a number of civil society organizations there to organize the parallel civil society forum, and this is when the civil society participation for the first time was quite massive. And this made a strong case for involvement in the official processes related to aid and development effectiveness, but other stakeholders immediately made sure that sort of this ticket, the entry ticket, wouldn't be for free. And they challenged the civil society organizations to apply all the principles of accountability, of effectiveness to themselves, which led to the formulation in 2010 of the Istanbul principles. In 2011, the participation by the civil society was already really large in the high-level forum in Busan. The outcome of the forum was the establishment of the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. Quite recently, it added a non-executive co-chair that represents the civil society and other stakeholders. It included in its work plan the special section related to the civic space at the country level. So this is one process that recognizes fully the importance of this multi-stakeholder processes that are enabled by the civil society participation, which essentially takes me to what my office, the UNDP Seoul Policy Center that I'm representing, has been doing, because since the forum in Busan, when we started working on this agenda, we have been supporting the government of Korea and other stakeholders in implementation of the principles for the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. One of the questions in our concept note was on the innovative partnership. So I wouldn't like to go sort of into just different examples of participation and partnerships, but I wanted to give examples of what can be done in the innovative way and differently. And in our experience, one such experiences has been the civil society participation in the training on development effectiveness issues. At the COICA GPDC Learning Accelerating Program, we invited the civil society networks to introduce the issues related to essentially partnering with civil society at the country level for the government officials. Moreover, the government official had a chance, through the exercise, to be in the shoes of the civil society activists in order to understand better how it feels to to be on the other side. The other important and innovative aspect, and something that we try to support, is the engagement of the civil society in the issue of knowledge sharing. We supported a small forum that took place in alongside the forum on knowledge sharing in Bali, simply because we thought that knowledge is also a very important, let's say, political subject. So who shares it, how it's being shared, with whom, and what are the results of this, is an issue that can be also considered in the context of the advocacy. The other innovative issue is in engagement of the civil society in analysis of different aid modalities. Sabyasachi already elaborated on the South-South cooperation. Now, I just wanted to highlight that this issue becomes even more important during the COVID pandemic, and hopefully in its aftermath, simply because, well, a lot of people say right now that, you know, we have the window of opportunity related to enhancement of the ODA, but the window is relatively small, and it would require a lot of action by the civil society. My colleague Sarah Torres from the Reality of Aid Network shared some of reports of the of their recent work, and it shows actually civil society working very hard to defend the development effectiveness agenda, advocating for achievement of what is called unfinished business, what has not been achieved so far. Basically, well, expressing concerns that some of the COVID response that started can sometimes not go in line with the development effectiveness principles, such as ownership and alignment. Well, and since the time, I think, is an issue, I just wanted to conclude saying that, of course, in the sort of fourth industrial revolution, we we sometimes have illusion that you know, the advent of the digital tools will reach the whole of society automatically. Nevertheless, I think we don't need to delude ourselves. The role of the civil society remains extremely important in this process. And since the discussion is happening in the context of the HLPF, I also want to say that the VNRs represent indeed very good target for civil society inputs, and the SDG 17 happened to be one of the very weakly sort of elaborated part in very many VNRs. And not only VNRs, but also the shadow reports that were produced by the civil society. This is why I hope that in the decade of action, this trend can be turned. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And I'd like to continue my presentation, which is going to be the last one, then take some questions which we have already received. Can I have my slides? Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about partnership with business sectors in the linkage of business and human rights and SDGs. Business human rights is a corporate responsibility to protect human rights in the global supply chain. It's an international framework already established as a global standard in the world, and especially the UN guiding principle on business and human rights, where civil society could engage. It's already set up within the framework. Can I have a next slide? First of all, you know, it's very familiar to you, this SDGs gold icon. And I would like to make it clear that SDGs are basically human rights. Could you click the first one? No poverty, which means that right to life, right? Next one, zero hunger, right to food. Number 3, good health, right to health. Number 4, right to education. So just keep clicking. You can see they're all human rights treaties within the SDGs goal. But if you look at the SDGs goal themselves, you don't see any human rights word. But there are many in the 2030 agenda, transforming world document. There are many human rights, such as such as realize to human rights of all kind of things. So each goal means human rights. And next slide, please. And next one. And I think business is the most powerful sectors in society, and play a huge role of the global economy for growth and achieving SDGs. And for example, in the case of Japan, business sectors might think that SDGs could be a business chance by solving social issues without enough consideration of human rights. So I think, and therefore, business human rights is a good initiative for CSO to engage in business sectors for achieving SDGs. And there needs to be strong leadership of government to protect human rights anyway to achieve the SDGs. Now, UN guiding principle is adopted in the UN, and each country is obligated to launch a national action plan to implement human rights, business and human rights. Next slides, please. So this is direct linkage of business with SDGs. Business is related to almost all SDGs, but especially number 8, 9, 12, 13, 17, there's a direct linkage for business to work on the SDGs. Next slide. So UN guiding principle on the business and human rights, UNGPS, it's kind of a framework among business, government, and civil society. So there's a partnership engagement for civil society work with business. It's already set up within this framework. Then government is asking the business to do the human rights due diligence, monitoring. So this kind of a tripartite relationship is very important to implement UN guiding principle of business and human rights. And Japanese government is just about to launch the national action plan to ask business sector to protect human rights. Next slide, please. So this is the last one, human rights due diligence, which means that identify, prevent, mitigate, account for how business addresses their impacts on human rights. So this is a kind of process of the HR, human rights due diligence. For example, especially the yellow word, assessment of human rights, remedy, monitoring, stakeholder engagement, improve, by the PDCA. So my conclusion is civil society's engagement, partnership with business is already embedded, set up already within the framework of business human rights. And in the case of Japan, Japanese government is now about to launch the National Action Plan, and which means that asking Japanese business sector to do the human rights due diligence, which is this global supply chain, not only the civil society of Japan, but all civil society, global supply chains operation, which means African countries, South Africa, American Latin countries, and Europe, or any countries. So I think it's already embedded to, we are open to engage with this human rights due diligence with working with the business sector. So I think it's now time it's move on for civil sectors more like in the global supply chain in engagement with business sectors and any country. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. Okay, thank you very much. Now I would like to take last couple of questions. And Joyce, could you help me to take some questions from the chat box?
Yes, Hideki, there was one question.
Okay.
Does anyone know funding opportunities for improving or researching on SDG data collection, publication?
Does anyone know funding resource for data collection? No. Okay, please let us know if you come up some answers later on. So, and business sectors from Urna, thank you very much. My question is answered. Is that so? I hope that if it's so, thank you very much.
Yes, Hideki, Urna's question.
Okay. Okay, any other question to Priya? Any other persons? Don't hesitate to ask any question and just write your question on the chat box.
I think Priya wants to be very specific. She's asking which country there are funding opportunities. UNDP has technical support available for funding. So if the question is more specific about the country, maybe Priya could answer.
Just to say, I mean, it's hard from the headquarters, but I know country offices have access to small pots of funding. UNDP in particular, really working on SDG, a lot of SDGs, but more of a priority on SDG 16. And there's support from the Oslo Governance Center and the technical support through a data monitoring initiative. So just get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with the relevant people.
Okay, thank you very much, Priya. I hope that kind of question is answered. Maybe 1 minute each. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And it's getting close to the end of this event. Now, I would like to ask one more time each speakers to give us a final message, how we could move on from now on to achieve the SDGs and in the context of the partnerships. So can I ask anyone to start with? Please raise your hand or start speaking. I think
Sure,
John left already. Priya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think there was a lot of interest in this group about the private sector, and part of my remarks really emphasize that it's a very slow relationship building process. There's a lot of trust that needs to be built, and which is why the voluntary national review it can be an opportunity for growing that partnership. From our perspective, because we work on monitoring and data, it's very sensitive. So to engage the private sector on data, there's a lot of issues regarding privacy. So how do you manage that? And I think part of it is what I had mentioned, that it starts at the beginning of the planning process, where you engage them in a conversation and a dialogue, and where you bring them into several elements of the process, so they can start feeling, first of all, understanding a little bit more about government priorities, understanding why it's important for the private sector to invest in the SDGs for the success of their own respective companies. And then they themselves will see areas where they can provide support. And generally, when we think of private sector, we think of philanthropy and just supporting initiatives that are already ongoing. But the idea here is to take it to the next step and to really try to look for opportunities for public-private partnerships. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Who will go next? Gasha? Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your name first. Please.
Yeah, so this one is, in fact, I'm really thankful to you, Chair, the way you have linked all the SDGs with the human rights. This was very useful way of looking at SDGs. Now, one point which I didn't really, kind of made any comment during my presentation on India's multiple partnerships, how they could really be useful, particularly in this COVID era. India, as you know, the situation of COVID-19 is unfolding, and India is at the moment is more or less at the center of the epidemic. But the kind of solutions, in fact, would be coming from India. Whether, how do you really find solutions of sanitation or vaccination or, low cost kind of treatment, that would be very useful for many other developing countries, because this is spreading all over the world. And, some of the solutions which are coming from the Western world, they are very, very expensive, in fact, kind of medicines, etc. So maybe, within a few 2-3 months only, India has really come out with, the PPE kits, or we have even now the ventilators and the huge numbers, and then earlier the hydrochloroquine and the issues of India's pharmaceutical sector is very important. So all these kind of strength which India has, how India can really use through these development partnerships, many other developing countries during this COVID era. India did send a lot of these medicines, particularly in the South Asian countries and also to many other countries in the world. So I think in the coming weeks and months, one would find that some of the solutions to deal with COVID-19, which will come from India, perhaps would be very, very useful for many other developing countries.
Okay, thank you very much, Galshan. And can I ask voluntarily, Denison?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have had an interesting presentation, quite diverse in the experiences and emphasis. I just want to conclude with the point that we are really looking at localizing SDGs with the theme of leaving no one behind. And so in that context, civil society, which is more advocacy-based global networks, really need to partner with grassroots, people's community-based organizations. So I would say quite a bit of that is centered around self-help groups, centered around cooperatives, centered around what is now called social solidarity-based organizations that are trying to bring the cross-cutting nature of SDGs in the localized context. It's how does the civil society advocacy at the global level capture the dynamism, the resilience of the ground that might not really be in partnership with private sector. It often is in contestation with the big companies because they are looking at alternative models, bypassing middleman, conflicting with even state political actors, and so forth. While I recognize that, but I think we need to flag up much more the grassroots movements that even during COVID period, in the informal sector, their resilience, the dynamism that's actually rebuilt solidarity on the ground and the localizing of economy. And they are often in contestation with the big economic powers. And that challenge needs to come from the ground. And I hope civil society can capture this at all levels and tap that potential. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Denison. Can I ask Ingo, still there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say my thanks to Jyotsna for organizing this. It was really interesting. I fully agree with Denison what you said at the end. So I think this grassroots local level work, that's really fundamental, and only if we do this connection properly, the national politics will change, and definitely the connection with the private sector. So it's very interesting what you described about the connection with business and human rights. So that's one way, which is quite challenging. But for that, the role of civil society is definitely to ask critical questions and to hold private sector accountable. So and I agree with Dr. Gulshan, we can learn a lot from India on that. I mean, I worked 20 years with Bangladesh, and there are many solutions in India and Bangladesh or in other countries, which we also, where we can learn from each other in South-South, but we might also learn in Europe if we think about reducing consumption. So in general, I think it's always interesting to see how much is going on. I mean, also academics and the UN system, and for me, it's really now the question how the implementation can be faster and much stronger. And so I think the role of civil society is definitely to help the people to from the grassroots to be part of the process, to speak. But the people are only interested if they see real changes. Otherwise, they see this as some kind of technical or irrelevant process. And I think this is our big challenge, how to create the real changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ingo. Now, can I ask Sabiachi?
Yes, I'll just quickly go through some of the concluding thoughts, if I may put it. And of course, we are now aware of the range of stakeholders that we are talking about. So there is a lot of work needed on the mechanisms that are sustainable, and the philosophy and the frameworks that we adopt to build partnerships from when it comes to SDGs. It is about moving from quantity to quality, and what should be our short-term, medium-term, and long-term objectives when we build partnerships. Second is, of course, as I have already pointed out, that we have to be very sector-specific and be thematic in our approach to have a bigger impact. You know, we have been discussing about India. Of course, India offers scale in terms of experience, and that is a very important lesson when we build partnerships. The third point is about, the fast-moving technology frontiers. You know, in all countries, policy is trying to catch up with technology, but we should also be very careful about civil society, social sciences catching up with technology, and where we build the connection between natural sciences and social sciences, and how do we build this dialogue around that. And my last point is about data. And as we have discussed a lot in this session, we need to be a lot more sophisticated in capturing what is not getting captured. And there we need to have our own ideas in terms of building on innovative partnerships to build on data infrastructure itself. So with this, I thank all of you, and it was really, really a great experience joining all of you in this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I ask the Artemi in the last from UNDP South Korea?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank Jyotsna and all the organizations that were co-organizers in convening this meeting. I'm based in South Korea. It was hit by the crisis relatively early in this year, but right now it's sort of much better comparing to a lot of places that are connected today. Even here, nevertheless, the SDGs agenda was very quickly taken over by the preoccupations of today that are sometimes much bigger. Now, I think the discussion that we are having makes me believe that we sort of still believe and focus on the implementation of the SDGs, and the civil society is a driver of this process, and it should be definitely done in partnership. Just wanted to agree with my colleague Priya on the question that came regarding the funding sources. I think that the SDGs is a very broad agenda, and that's why it's really important to be, well, country specific and sector specific in order to identify concrete opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much, Artemi. Before asking the final closing remark to Joycina, just logistic information that we could share those slides we use for presentation and the contact point. Please ask Joycina. I think you all have a email address, and some slides are very, very much interesting. Please ask us. So Joycina, thank you very much for arranging this wonderful discussion. I think we had a very, very fruitful discussion, very diverse. We can still learn each other, work together. And I think civil society is a very good position to attract many different sectors, and especially advantage for the grassroots movement, human rights approach, and beyond the border, we can work together. And still big challenge ahead, but please continue work together. And Joycina, please make your final remark.
Thank you so much for all your time for this very good and diverse deliberation that we had, and we have had a lot of we actually heard from multi-stakeholder points of view. We heard from UN, we heard from civil society, we heard about global decades of accountability, and the interesting thing we heard about the SDGs from the human rights perspective, and how can we work with the business, and how can we capacitate them on the human right ways. We have heard great examples from the academics here, from the think tank. One thing that comes to my mind that from my very limited knowledge, but then what we have been seeing for last few years, especially during the time of pandemics, we have since we are talking about the innovative partnership, we are talking about the technology, sophisticated technology. I would just say we have, as a civil society people, we are quite equipped with technology, especially but except the grassroots people. But in very shame for us that what we see in the Asia Pacific regional CSO mechanism, we are seeing in the HLPF that we do not get much in the technical glitches are suppressed. So this is one thing that we've seen during the time of pandemics, and I think it's important for all of us to actually think about civil society, and because we are one of the key drivers in the whole in this whole implementation mechanism of SDGs. So I think it would be really nice, especially from the South, from the global South, we see that our voices are not much heard, especially at the high-level political forum kind of platform which is going on. And every night we are awake until 3 a.m. We are trying to push for our statements, and we are working with the DESA, and we are making sure that if they are not given chance, then our statements are published. These are really struggling time for us. But I really hope that all of you are understanding that, there are, despite we use a lot of techniques and innovation, despite all our work, which is being highly acknowledged, but then somehow we do not get to speak at such important forum, or our voices are not heard that time. So that much. So with this, I would really thank you all, and we hope that we all survive through HLPF, and I wish you all the good luck for all the side events that's happening in future. We have seen a lot of side events in the chat box. Please attend those side events, and all the best to all of you, and thank you so much. And thank you all the organizers. Thank you Forus, Janik, and all the participants, and everyone, and UNDP, and Global Alliance, and FIDC, Malaysia, GCAP, all of you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Joycina. You still speak too fast. That's no problem. It's joking. So this is the end of this session, and thank you very much once again. And we still look forward to working with you with the partnership. And please stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.